Welcome to Thinking Like a Lawyer with your hosts Ellie Mistal and Joe Patrice, talking about legal news and pop culture, all while thinking like a lawyer. Here on Legal Talk Network.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, that's good. Oh, you're getting in on the intros, huh? This is another edition of Thinking Like a Lawyer. That was Catherine Rubino from Above the Law talking. This is Joe Patrice talking.
Hi.
Hi. You know, I feel like sometimes that we at Above the Law need to, us, Stacy, the regular editors, I view us sometimes as almost like an elite strike team of law. If you don't know what that's a reference to, that elite strike
Congratulations.
team.
You've
You've been in Iraq.
successfully-
Yeah. No, the elite strike team is the official name, apparently,
Official?
of the Trump legal team. That would be Rudy Giuliani, Jenna Ellis, and Sidney Powell.
Ooh.
Oops. Not so much anymore.
Not so fast.
Yeah, it appears as though Sidney Powell has been relieved of her duties on the elite strike team.
So here's a question.
Mhm.
What kind of batshit crazy stuff was Sidney Powell saying behind the scenes to get booted from this team?
Fun fact, it wasn't behind the scenes. It was the stuff she was saying out loud. The legal team has a number of largely dubious legal claims that they're currently making, but Sidney had the most explosive ones. She's the one who continually says that Hugo Chavez hacked the election from beyond the grave, mind you, and had computer voting machines change votes, even though the computer voting machines she's complaining about were not the machines in the jurisdictions that they say went the wrong way. Anyway, it was some stuff. But honestly, I think the real thing that put an end to her involvement with the team was that she decided to jump on the Doug Collins train and argue that Kelly Loeffler actually shouldn't have finished second in the Georgia runoff, that it should have been Doug Collins. And so she's like going to take down Kelly Loeffler. And I think that was the point when the mainstream of the Republican group, who has more or less humored these legal challenges, said, well, wait a minute, now she's going to botch our chances in Georgia.
I mean,
And I think that was the end of her run as part of the official legal team.
it's a pretty decent argument that the series of largely baseless legal claims are going to botch the Republicans' chances in Georgia anyway. There's quite a bit of anger over the series of challenges, and if anything, it's just motivating folks in Georgia more, which, you know, can only help the Democrats.
Yeah, I guess, but whatever. Nonetheless, so elite strike team, I guess.
We should come up with some some superhero.
Oh, no, this is like Civil War. Oh, she's like
so
the...
you don't mean the American Civil War?
No, I mean like the comic book. Like she's like
Right.
like the Captain America of the...
Does she have to be Captain America?
Yeah, because the official government side was the Iron Man side, so she's
Mm.
the rogue from that. So I think that puts her in that role, I guess.
I get you're also not talking very much about the way it was portrayed in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, right? But
No, but well, I mean, although it was portrayed similar enough, at least on that front.
Okay.
Yeah, you know,
because you are in fact a comic book nerd.
I don't feel like that's fair, but you
I
know,
don't also think it's a bad thing. And listen, my niece is very interested in comic books and superheroes at the moment, so I'm trying to foster this kind of thing for her.
No, I mean, you have a fairly deep knowledge of this too, as much as you're trying to pin this on me. But no, so yeah.
But I think that going forward, every large legal team should absolutely adopt some sort of superhero moniker, right? It's just more fun. Like, you know, like how you have like a listserv that's like the blank case distro. Instead of that, it should be like, you know, Wonder Twins or Falcon Justice.
Yeah, I hear that. I'd be interested to like spin out whether or not this was more like a Powerpuff Girls team or
But going forward, I think that they should always, like every single MDL should have a code name.
Okay.
Don't you think?
See, I feel like that was an idea that some lawyers in the past had, and then Enron happened, and we learned what's wrong with doing that. Yeah, see, for those who don't know how Enron ended, don't worry, you'll have the opportunity anytime you test out legal technology, because every data set in every e-discovery demo ever is the Enron stuff. But yeah, no, they created team names for themselves and cute little names for their special vehicles, and they were largely damning for what they were actually trying to do. So
I don't remember what they actually were because I'm younger than you are, but
I mean, there were a bunch. There were a lot of Star Wars based ones, but they were a lot of like sly references to this not being necessarily a great idea. And they went ahead and did that anyway. But enough about that side of legal technology. More positive side of legal technology.
Is it coming? I think it's coming.
If you work with contracts,
there it is.
if you work with contracts and don't use contract tools, you're missing a lot. Save time, make more money, and do a better job for your clients with Contract Tools by Paper Software. Contract Tools is the most powerful word add-in for working with contracts. Thousands of lawyers all over the world rely on Contract Tools every day for every kind of deal. Visit papersoftware.com to watch a demo and get a free trial. As a special offer to podcast listeners, use coupon code LTN2020 to get 1 month free. That's papersoftware.com and LTN2020.
Good job.
Yeah. So what else has been going on in the world?
Man, I can't keep even 2 more thoughts in my head. I don't remember. What's been going on?
I don't know. Kyle Rittenhouse got bail.
Oh, God, that was awful. No wonder I've forgotten it.
So, yes. So Ricky Schroder.
I mean, come on.
Of Silver Spoons fame.
I mean,
and also NYPD Blue, but I mean, let's face it.
Silver Spoons.
Silver Spoons.
Yeah,
so Ricky Schroder bailed out.
And the My Pillow guy.
Well, yeah, but that guy. That dude.
Yeah.
Anyway, but they bailed out Kyle Rittenhouse, the Kenosha shooter, the kid who used his stimulus check, it turned out, to buy his machine gun to go up and kill innocent people. So that was that. But he got bail. Now, I know people are upset about this. I have mixed feelings about it, because I do think I am one of these people who doesn't think that cash bail is a very good thing. I think that you should either decide somebody is a flight risk and has to be held in jail, or you should say they should be able to go free, but you should not be having these like, we're going to hold them and we'll do it by making it $2 million, because, they'll find a way with the help of Ricky Stratton. What was his name in the
show? I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe Stratton. It doesn't matter. The point is that I see
it
what
absolutely does matter, Catherine.
Okay, well,
yeah,
you
go
have
on.
the internet. You can figure this out. You don't have to involve me in the process. But listen, I mean, I understand. Was it Stratton?
Ricky Stratton.
Of course
Yeah.
it freaking was. Okay. Of course it was. And of course his name was Ricky, because he couldn't manage to remember any other freaking name in his little pea-brained head. Anyway, the point is that, yes, there are obviously problems with the cash bail system. I completely agree with you on that front. But it seems to me that, like, the ways in which we fight against it should not be this is not the case to make that argument, right? There are millions of cases around the country which are probably a better example of why cash bail is terrible, and it's not, a white supremacist shooter. There you go. I don't think that needs to be the one that we kind of plant the cash bail reform flag in.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, I'm just saying that when I hear people say, it's awful that he made bail, I feel like this is kind of the wrong discussion in my mind. I feel like the discussion shouldn't be, look at all these rich people gave him money to give him bail. The question is, do you think that he needed to be pretrial detained or not? And the question of bail is just a question of money at that point.
Sure, but
I
mean, I do think that it is a very powerful example of sort of the two Americas, right?
Well, yeah, sure.
And on a lot of social media are comparing Kyle Rittenhouse to Khalif Browder, who was held in Rikers for years for allegedly trying to steal a backpack, and when he was finally released, had a ton of issues as a result of his time in Rikers because he allegedly stole a backpack. Like, the fact that there are two Americas, the fact that the cash bail system is not equitably rolled out is real, and I think that it's a particularly powerful example of that.
See, but that's kind of my point too. Is right. the two Americas exist because we put a dollar figure on whether or not you get to be released pre-trial. And that's the problem, because you put a dollar figure and then rich people get to buy their way out, or people who can have access to things, and other folks don't, which is why, despite the insane ramblings of the New York Post and its ilk, the move to get rid of cash bail in New York State has been a very good thing, because it takes away the question of, can you buy your way out of this, or can you successfully GoFundMe your way out of this, and turns it into is someone an actual flight risk or not? And there's not a middle ground anymore to say, oh, well, you're
$2
a
million
flight
should
risk.
have been able to keep you in jail indefinitely,
You're a
but now
flight
we're
risk
mad that
up to $2 million. It's like, no, you either are a risk or not. And that doesn't suggest that, pretrial detention isn't going to happen and bad things come from it, but it, makes it a little bit more palatable, I think. But anyway.
Yeah. Was there anything good that happened this week, at least?
Good? No, it's 2020. What the hell's wrong with you? Nothing good happened.
Aw, that's
Yeah. No, I mean,
accurate, but deeply upsetting at the same time.
I mean, we're hearing a little bit more about some, rollbacks of salary decreases, some like increased work from home stuff, some more bonuses. Economically, things are getting a little bit better. And it makes you wonder, how have firms weathered previous economic downturns and come out stronger on the other side? Well, LexisNexis Interaction has released an in-depth global research report confronting the 2020 downturn, lessons learned during previous economic crises. Download your free copy at interaction.com/likealawyer to see tips, strategies, plans, and statistics from leaders who have been through this before and how they've reached success again.
Good job.
Yeah, no, I mean, my favorite part of that ad read always is the word crises. I feel like that's I don't know, something like it just, it seems like a little upper crust for me to be saying like, oh, not a crisis, it's crises.
I think that was entirely in your head, and I'm here for it. I'm here for it, though. It's fine.
I don't know. I feel like Ricky Stratton. First time, yeah. No. You know what I was just trying to do, but I failed to do? I was trying to find the Silver Spoons theme song to play right there, but...
Better luck next time.
Yeah. It's interesting. As a kid... Now we're just kind of going off. As a kid, I remember John Houseman was in that show, and I remember thinking that, like, oh, this is like the thing that guy does. He had a career like before that,
really,
and actually like did real stuff. But this is how my brain now only thinks of him as the grandpa on Silver Spoons. Oh well. Which is a show, of course, I saw in reruns decades after the fact, because I was clearly not old enough to have watched it in first run.
So listen, another one, Mr. Simpsons references.
Yeah, no, I mean, the only other thing that I can think of that happened, if you don't have anything else to discuss, is that William Barr, the Attorney General, it turns out a recent report has dug into and found that Caterpillar, the construction company, was in the midst of a $2.3 billion tax case, which was being...
That's weird. I haven't heard a lot about that case against them.
Yeah, you haven't. It was being aggressively pursued by it actually spans administrations, but the Jeff Sessions-run Justice Department was still going forward investigating it. Mm-hmm. And Caterpillar's attorney was Bill Barr, as it turns out.
Convenient for them.
Interestingly, this case, which was aggressively pursued for years, grand jury had already weighed in to say that, go forward, basically. And Bill Barr became the attorney general, and the case was dropped a week later. Magic, yeah. It is, it's one of those stories that when I saw it, I thought, this is the problem with the world right now, because
when everything's on fire.
When everything's on fire, you don't see...
That little trash fire over there doesn't look that bad.
Yeah, no, and as it was being buried underneath Rudy Giuliani literally melting on camera, I just thought, well, this is a shame, because this strikes me as way more serious as far as long-term faith in the Justice Department goes than the elite strike team's joke. Like, they're not even like the real, like, they're like the Great Lakes Avengers. They're like not even the good kind. Yeah. Which makes Sidney Powell Squirrel Girl, I think. Anyway, the point is...
Oh, do you know that they actually have figures, like you can buy a squirrel girl, like Barbie? It's not Barbie, but it's like an action figure that's like
nice.
Barbie
I did not know that. I mean, fantastic character.
Well, it's a good thing that my 8-year-old niece does not listen to this podcast because she might have an inkling as to what Aunt Cat's got on the agenda.
Hey, Squirrel Girl beat Dr. Doom once, so...
That is true.
Yeah, so, I mean...
It could happen.
Anyway, point is, long term, this seems like a huge problem to have an attorney general who comes into office and bails out their own clients. And what really gets me about it is even if there was some reason why this case should go away, look, Rod Rosenstein doesn't deserve much credit for anything.
No,
but Rod Rosenstein, very public, and Jeff Sessions too. They both very publicly got themselves in trouble by adhering at least to the bare minimum of ethical standards while running the Justice Department.
Well, when people get criticized for doing the bare minimum, then of course you're going to have some people who are not even going to do the bare minimum.
And that's really the thing. Give those people as much flack as they deserve for the things they did. But where there were situations where Sessions was a potential fact witness in a matter, he couldn't do it. He made a point of that. Rosenstein took over and he felt he couldn't do it, hands it to Mueller. That whole process was at least an attempt to transparently suggest that the Justice Department has some measure of independence.
Right.
If you are the attorney for a company that is under a $2.3 billion criminal investigation, when you become the attorney general, even if there's a risk that this case is going to be dropped, you have to make a very public and showy effort to say, I am not involved in this decision. It has to be even if the FBI was going to drop it the next day, you have to put a hold on that. You have to make sure an independent person looks at it and decides. You do these things because you care about the system. And the fact that none of this happened... You have to care about the system. As the fact that none of this happened is really, really problematic.
And listen, I think the damage, you kind of jokingly, I think, said that the damage to lawyers as a result of the Trump administration is going to take decades to overcome, but it's real. It's not a joke.
Well, I mean, that was a comment I made about that press conference, and that's just the reputation of lawyers. And not about the administration. It's just after watching that press conference, we as a profession are going to have to spend years saying, no, see, we can't bring claims when there's no evidence. And no, it's not an answer to a question to say, oh, but we don't want to show you our evidence. Normal scrutiny is not a thing. But
alas.
Obviously there's the great Strict Scrutiny podcast. I almost feel like our podcast is the Normal Scrutiny podcast. It's
it should be a thing.
Actual academics talking about the law is Strict Scrutiny, and then we're over here providing you your Normal Scrutiny podcast.
I like it.
Yeah. Anyway. Well, I think we're ready to bring on our guest and talk about some stuff. So earlier today, we learned that the North Carolina bar is moving to an online bar exam in February. They famously...
I was going to say, is this news?
Well, they famously stuck with an in-person exam in July, which a lot of us criticized at the time. Now they've realized that it's time to move online.
And only getting worse.
Yes. And so while we have a lot of problems with all that, and online, while better than in person, also isn't great. What a lot of what's happened this year, for those who've been following Above the Law or listening to the show, a lot of what we've been talking about is how the pandemic has caused kind of a stress test on the whole concept of the bar exam. And maybe there are things about how we license people in all the jurisdictions around this country that probably could be changed and be better. And with that in mind, I wanted to bring in our guest because we have Aaron Taylor from AccessLex, who you all just were part of and help sponsor a new study that looks at these questions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So walk us through a bit about the study. I mean, it is a big study. It's a lot of material. I know Professor Merritt was involved. Friend of the show, Kyle Mechty, was involved. Tons of people were involved in getting this report together to talk about this. So walk us through what happened there.
Yeah, I mean, you say it's a big study. It's big both literally and figuratively, with 100-something pages, and just the topic itself is so important. So historically, there's just been a dearth of good empirical research on legal education and the manner in which we license lawyers. And so this study was really just asking a basic question: what is minimum competence to practice law? Because, of course, that's the entire premise of bar exams, to assess the extent to which somebody is minimally competent to be allowed into the profession. And that concept had really never been defined. Bar exams themselves have not been proven to serve the effect of keeping bad lawyers out of the profession. And so the study really wanted to just dig into what does that look like in the context of the actual practice of law. And it did it by asking lawyers about what competencies do they use in their everyday work.
Yeah. I mean, one thing that we've talked about on this show when we've been complaining about bar exams is it's just, I mean, when we're talking about minimum competency, it's also a question of like minimum competency to do what? The age of the generalist lawyer in a lot of ways is gone. I mean, it's rare that, you know, as a litigator, I needed to know how real estate transactions are closed and so on and so forth. And yet we test everybody as though they have to have a closed book command for one couple of days of their life, command of all these different areas. And it's just so crazy.
And it's not only command of it, but command of it without any resources to double check your knowledge and make sure that it's actually correct. I mean, the bar exam in many ways is built on the premise of the retail lawyer, you know, the lawyer who essentially takes in whatever comes through the door and handles it. It's kind of like, it puts me in the mind of Mayberry from the Andy Griffith show. I'm dating myself a bit, but that's the premise of it. And like you said, the profession is much different now. One of the interesting findings of this study, as well as others that have been done recently, is that skills and abilities are much more important than substantive knowledge of law, right? Because, I mean, hey, if you have sufficient ability to do legal research, you can find out what the law says, right? And so it really does harken back a time that no longer exists, the current iterations of the bar exam.
A line that I've used in some of my stuff that has taken on it's become kind of a phrase that some of the diploma privileged people toss around on social media, quoting me. But the practice of law is an open book exam. You are never in a situation where something comes up and the lawyer is applauded for saying, "I refuse to look that up. I'm just going to trust that I'm right."
Well, I mean, there is, of course, a Supreme Court nomination or process where there was a lot of...
putting aside ACB,
Well, and you rightly, I think, criticized folks who were like, "Aha, gotcha, you don't know the First Amendment freedoms," by saying there's never an instance where you need to know any of that off the top of your head if you have access to Lexis and Westlaw or Casetext or whatever.
Yeah. And what I liked about this exam is one of the first points it makes is that closed book exams seem like a bad way of testing minimum competence if your goal is to test the minimum competence of somebody to be a lawyer in a realistic world.
Absolutely. It's not only bad, it's horrible.
Yeah.
There's literally no worse way to do that. And so my first job out of law school was with the Office of Bar Counsel in DC. It's now the Office of Bar Discipline, I think it is. But essentially, they're the folks who investigate allegations of ethical misconduct. Yeah. And we had a saying that if a lawyer practices law in the same way that we require them to analyze legal issues on the bar exam, they will have a complaint before us very soon after they got their license, because it just simply does not reflect reality. And it really goes to, you know, this entire notion of using the bar exam to exclude, as opposed to using the bar exam as an actual tool to make sure that our profession is as best as it can be. So in some ways, it's philosophical. It was never meant to be, at least I don't think it was never meant to be a good way of assessing people. I think it was meant to be mainly a way to exclude people.
Yeah. That's a great point. I want to pivot from the closed book issue to the performance test issue. We've talked a little bit about this, but one of the elements of the report is about performance tests and how those are different. So what would a performance test look like?
Right. So, of course, you have the multi-state performance test, the MPT. And essentially the way it's structured is the test taker gets kind of like a constructed universe, if you will. So they get a packet of materials that purport to be, say, like a legal case file. And some of the materials are directly relevant to the call of the question. Other materials are irrelevant to it. And it's on the test taker to sift through what's relevant, what's not relevant, and then among what's relevant, really get to what's being asked as part of the problem. And so that most closely replicates what lawyers do, because irrespective of what type of law you're practicing, you're going to have materials that you have to review. You're going to have to figure out what's relevant, what's not, and then you're going to have to solve whatever the issue is that you're facing. So it's broadly applicable, and it aligns most closely with reality.
Yeah. You'll always have something to read. And the ability to show that I mean, we get a little bit of this with some of the reading comprehension questions, but the ability to see documents and pull out of them what's valuable
Right.
is the whole point. That's the whole
Yeah.
minimum competency.
Yeah. And there are many ways to assess that. The question is, what's the most efficient way, right? And what's the most direct way? And it seems to me and many others that the MPT, the more performance test, I think is the best way to do it. Also, just experiential learning. So externships, other things, client simulations. There are other ways to exhibit these skills as well. But essay exams and multiple choice exams aren't the best way, though they still may get to those skills indirectly.
Yeah, one of the concerns I always have with I'm one of those folks who believes in more externships and so on and so forth, and I recognize that it's hard enough sometimes to get a job in the legal world, and now to force people to have to get a job could be an issue.
Right.
But it also, the flip side of it is, of course, people who may not on paper seem like someone a firm wants to give a salary to,
right,
can demonstrate by showing up that, I just had a bad LSAT and I'm really fully competent, and they get that opportunity through a lower stakes externship. It just seems like it's a longer term process to transition to, but seems like one that, if we had the will, would be a better option.
Yeah, and having that type of experience to distract from other factors that may not be in the applicant's favor, as you said, could give them a leg up. But then it also could, for the firms, really show them who has the best chance of thriving in the practice of law, as opposed to who was just the best student in the classroom.
So I guess the question going forward, now people are going to have this report in front of them, and we'll have a link somewhere for this to make sure that this gets out and people get a chance to look. What's going to be, are there any jurisdictions that seem like they might be primed for hearing this sort of discussion, might be interested, be the first test cases that we might be able to lobby to make a change?
Well, I don't know of any specifically as it relates to this report, but I can tell you California is really going about a very in-depth process of questioning all the assumptions about its bar exam and the extent to which it aligns with the practice of law in that state. And I think they're about to impanel a blue ribbon commission to talk about the future of the bar exam and to really make recommendations to the Supreme Court of California about what the exam should look like. And I'm sure there are other jurisdictions as well, but that's the most high profile one. One of the recommendations out of this report is that there should be a panel of experts brought together to actually design kind of like an ideal or prototypical bar exam or means of testing lawyers for purposes of bar admission. And so I think both of those things can flow together. You can have jurisdictions, looking at their own ways of doing this, but then you can also have this separate group that can maybe put out model best practices on bar examinations or something along those lines.
Yeah. And while it's important to have models, a lot of us worry that we kind of went the opposite direction for a while, and we kind of homogenized the test in ways that are not particularly productive. It's one thing to have a model that everyone should follow, and another to dictate to every jurisdiction, these are the questions you have to use.
Yeah. And it's somewhat of an irony because the uniform bar exam, for instance, that's been a great thing for test takers because it allows them to port their scores to other jurisdictions, of course, subject to what score they got. But you're right, just because an exam works in one state doesn't mean it works in another. And so jurisdictions really have to look at their own ways of going about this.
Yeah. Well, and also just as a matter of efficiency, I think the people behind the UBE aren't really thinking about a lot of the ideas that are in this report. They're very tied to multiple choice closed book questions are easy, so let's do that. And that's kind of exacerbated some of these problems.
Easy for the grader at the very least.
Yeah, easy from their perspective, yes. Which has exacerbated a lot of these problems. It really has been like one of the weird silver linings, as awful as that is, of how this pandemic's gone, is that we've gotten a real stress test.
And that's actually what I was thinking. A lot of these issues obviously have been festering for a lot longer than the pandemic. You pointed out California. They've been doing a lot of work on the bar exam because of outrage over it's a very difficult test to pass. A lot of it's not even based on percentages as opposed to competency and a lot of that stuff. But obviously, COVID has changed that and has created a stressor. What is the ways in which you see COVID or the future of sort of online exams playing into the way the bar exam will go forward, or ideally would go forward?
Well, my general philosophy is, with crisis often comes opportunities. And there's very often good that can come out of crisis circumstances. And in this case, it is that we've not only been forced to question, but we've been forced to do things differently in many cases. As it relates to online bar exams, I mean, it's hard to put technology back in the box. Once you open it up and once you start to use it and starts to work out the kinks associated with it, it becomes a part of your life. So I suspect that online examinations, whether you're talking about the bar exam, whether you're talking about the LSAT, may possibly be the future of bar examining. Now, obviously, jurisdictions have very different philosophies about a whole lot of things. So you'll have jurisdictions that stick to the traditional tack, but you will have many others that go on and do online exams more or less indefinitely.
Yeah. As Homer Simpson eloquently put it, Christ-atunity.
Exactly.
But yeah, no.
You have a Simpsons joke for pretty much everything.
It's hard not to. I mean, they've been on long enough. You can usually
30 years,
find
right?
them. Yeah, right. I mean,
You're still watching it. That's impressive.
But
It's like your longest commitment ever.
Yeah, that's probably true. But anyway, so yes, though this is great. Thank you so much for joining us, and we're going to put out links to this report. I think we're going to be dissecting a lot of what's in here for a long time. I read through it over the last couple of days, and even I think I probably need to sit down and have a real in-depth read of it to get everything out. But thank you so much, Aaron Taylor from AccessLex, who was one of the folks involved in this process, and hopefully we will have some bar exam reform in the future.
Sounds good to me.
Thanks. Yeah.
Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much. Okay, so thank you so much for listening. You should be subscribed to this show. If you're just listening to it through the Above the Law website, that's wonderful, but we would prefer you to subscribe. That way we can convince people, no, you really are here every week, and you would get your updates every week. Then give it some reviews, some stars, some words about it. Weigh in on how you feel about Squirrel Girl, whatever it is. Any words there shows engagement, and that helps people know that this podcast exists and is out there talking about law. You should be reading Above the Law, as always, because we have coverage of these issues as well as many more every day. You should be following us on social media. I'm at Joseph Patrice. She is at Catherine1, the numeral 1. Yeah, I love your hand signals now. I say the same thing every week, but you put up a finger.
I know,
for
it's
one.
not even a video. I get it.
Yeah, but I mean, I love your commitment to directing. That's,
Well, you are forgetful. So in your old age, see, don't come for me.
I don't even know.
I'll fight back.
Yeah. I don't even know the lyrics to the Silver Spoon theme song anymore. So anyway, you should be listening to The Jabot, which is Catherine's show talking about diversity in the law firm world. You can check out Legal Tech Week, which is my legal tech related roundtable with other legal tech journalists. You should be listening to the other offerings of the Legal Talk Network. There are too many even to mention. You should be checking out papersoftware.com and contract tools. Remember that code is LTN 2020. And with all of that said, I think we're done. You can go order whatever it is you clearly are trying to order online right now.
I have.
Oh, good. Well, see, there you go. I'm happy for you.
It's like Cyber Monday.
Oh, right. Yeah. It's not.
But they're doing it early because of the pandemic.
Yeah. Okay. Fine.
It's a Monday, and I'm buying something over the cyber
Isn't any Monday really a Cyber Monday if you want it to be?
That's what I'm saying.
Amazing. All right. We're done here.
If you'd like more information about what you've heard today, please visit LegalTalkNetwork.com. You can also find us at AboveTheLaw.com, ATLRedline.com, iTunes, RSS, Twitter, and Facebook. The views expressed by the participants of this program are their own and do not represent the views of, nor are they endorsed by, Legal Talk Network, its officers, directors, employees, agents, representatives, shareholders, and subsidiaries. None of the content should be considered legal advice. As always, consult a lawyer.